help but wonder where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Can't help but wonder where I'm bound.
Welcome back, everyone, to What's the Rush with me, Rebecca Rush. I am your teammate on this adventure. And today we'll be exploring with a fellow competitive athlete, world champion, and TBI survivor, traumatic brain injury survivor, Anneke Beerten. And her story is it's so cool. She is all about trailblazing leadership, inspiration, and reinvention. She is a multi-time world champion in mountain biking and has dominated so many disciplines in mountain biking, from BMX to four cross to enduro racing. She's been named the queen of Crankworx, which is gravity mountain biking's biggest stage, and she's an absolute legend in mountain biking. But what really stands out most for me isn't her wins, but it's how she's faced some unexpected challenges. After a traumatic brain injury abruptly ended her racing career, Anneke went heavy into the rehab for her brain and ultimately had to end her racing career. But she didn't step away from mountain biking. She didn't step away from what she loved. She stepped into a new role as a coach, mentor, and community builder. And she's proof that your identity doesn't end when the race ends, it actually evolves. And so I'm really excited to talk to you, Anneke. Welcome to the show. We have been former teammates. We haven't seen each other in a while, but it feels a little bit like a reunion to get to talk to you today.
Totally. I'm super excited to be here, and it's been definitely a couple of years. And thank you for the introduction. It's probably not an introduction I ever, thought that it would be like this. Talking about the TBI and ending a career on a totally different note than I ever expected. But super excited to
Yeah.
be here.
Yeah. I mean, I want to get into all of that, but I want to go first to you started bike racing at age 4. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I got a janky little BMX bike when I was about 3 years old, and I just loved it. I started riding, ripping around, just laps around the house, and my mom and dad were like, "Wow, she really likes, riding a bike." And then they took me to the local BMX track, and that's kind of where it all started.
Well, and then you started racing like right away and like as a teeny weeny little girl winning, juniors races. Tell us about like as a kid, like do you remember those days and like what you were thinking? Were you just playing and having fun or like how did
Yeah,
it start?
totally just playing and having fun. I think
Yeah.
especially in the earlier years, I never had any pressure from my parents because my parents didn't really have a racing background. My
Mhm.
dad did a little bit of he rode his dirt bike, motorcycles, and that's kind of how I think I fell in love with the two-wheel sport. And BMX was the closest that you could kind of do to motocross, and also more affordable. And
Yeah.
that's how I kind of got into it and just raced nationally. So back in the Netherlands, where I was born and raised, I did local BMX races. And then later on, until I was about 14, 15 years old, I started doing a couple of international races and doing world championships. And that's where everything really started clicking and started winning races. So yeah.
Yeah, like what, Junior Worlds at 16? Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, I
Exactly.
don't remember, like, I can barely remember what I was doing at 4 and 5 and those ages. And 16, I was just like messing around in the with my neighborhood friends and going to school. Like, I can't imagine at that age being on the world stage. Like, did it hit you that like that's not a normal childhood to
I
grow up
think
in?
it started hitting me around that age. And
Hmm.
before that, I did not really, I had kind of like, big dreams. And a couple of
Hmm.
those were like, one day I want to, win the world championships. And one day I want to go to America and ride my bike. Those were probably the two things at the top of my list. And
Wow.
then, when I into until I was like 16, 17, and started making the shift to mountain biking, that's when things got more serious and I started rolling into a more professional side of the sport. And also, it wasn't until my early 20s that I became a professional mountain biker. So I think the fun part and keeping it fun and no pressure and not really having a super structured like training plan was a good thing. I think
Yeah.
that's a totally different thing nowadays with younger riders.
Yeah.
Um, right? But I just always kept it fun. I did different things, and that's what really kept me like interested in the sport as well. I didn't get burned out or anything because I always felt there was something new to do or to ride.
Yeah, I mean, I know we met in person because we used to ride for the same bike company, and I remember like seeing you at Sea Otter, and you like, you know, obviously I do endurance, and I don't, my wheels never leave the ground. I'm not the kind of rider that you are. But seeing you like with your pads and your full face helmet, and like you were like a superhero to me because of one, the style of your riding was kind of something I couldn't really grasp, and two, because even now you're always smiling. You weren't like, you see other racers who were like super stressed and they were super serious in the team truck, and you were just kind of laughing and having a good time. So I love that about you, and I'm curious, how did you take that, once it became your job and your career and your paycheck and the stakes got a little higher, how did you keep that childlike joy? And you seem to still have it.
Yeah, I always felt like it was important to me to keep a good balance with having fun, my training plan, but also doing different things. So
Mhm.
either if it was like going to the gym, ride my road bike, do endurance riding, go to the BMX track, or ride my dirt bike, I always made sure that also the coaches that I worked with, that were aware of that, because
Yeah.
that's always for me an important part of my training, to keep it fun and to ride with other people and not just be on a road bike for 6 hours by myself, plowing away and looking at my watts. I was never really trained with watts. I just couldn't do it. I was like, this is just making my brain hurt. No, having to
Yeah.
look at how many watts I have to put in. Just let me ride and, let me put the miles in. And yeah, I think that fun part and keeping it balanced and going out there and like still really enjoying always what I did. And I think it's funny that you said that like how you looked at me, because I remember when I met you and knowing all the extreme long distances that you did, I was really impressed. And I never forget to how fit you were. And I was like, man, she must be lifting so many weights in the gym. And now I also like, realized that it's you have a natural build like that. But I always remember that when I first met you, when we were on the same team, and I was like, man, this is so cool. You're so fit and like putting all the crazy hours in. It's cool how, we can inspire each other in different ways.
Yeah, I mean, what you do seems impossible to me, and it's, thank you for the compliment that what I do and did seemed impossible to you. So,
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
bikes, I mean, that's the cool thing about bikes. There's a lot of ways to make it creative, and I think, part of your career longevity, and mine were doing different disciplines of cycling.
Yeah.
You went from BMX to enduro to four cross, and dual slalom and all sorts of stuff. And same, I've morphed and changed. I still will never do gravity events really. I've done a couple enduro races, but like not for real.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to come take to Benville and
But
take one of your clinics. I was just watching some of your videos. They're so cool. You're such a good teacher. I was watching some of your videos, of you teaching people to go off these huge jumps there, and and you actually you made it look like, oh, maybe I could maybe do that. Like for the first time in my life, I was like, huh, you're such a good teacher. I will
oh,
say,
thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
yeah, you make it seem possible, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Um, I want to get into, I mean, the type of writing that you do. I want to talk a little bit about fear,
Mhm.
because the type of writing that you do, and even in the video that I watched, you had one comment. You had the guy come up and look at the edge of the drop, and then you actually said, one tip that I know from racing is not to spend too much time looking at it, because then you start to get into your head and you start to create a different narrative instead of just looking and walking away. And so, a lot of the type of racing you did is so high speed, so high consequence. I'm curious about your relationship with fear, and not just on the bike, but like, how does that mindset carry into like trying really friggin' hard things?
Yeah, I think fear will always be a part of, doesn't matter if you're in sport or daily life, but we get pushed to the edge, especially when I did the downhill racing and even like the enduro stuff as well. And I think I always knew my limits pretty well, and knowing when I was able to kind of push it, maybe push over the limit a little bit, but also I was not afraid to sometimes to say no, and knowing
Mm.
that I reached my limit or I was just too scared, you know, and that
Was
happens.
there
It happens.
something in your body? Like, how do you know that? Was there like a message you'd get?
I always like, I still tell my athletes now that I coach, it's a gut feeling sometimes. If you're standing at the top, let's say like a drop that we were just talking about, and you're starting to feel nauseous and your stomach kind of flip upside down and you think more in fear than in possibilities and the positive side that is, you're going to clear the drop and it's going to be fine. Then that is always like something like, okay, let's set it aside. Maybe come back tomorrow if I'm, at the race event. I would always like kind of wait because there's more to a course than just one drop,
Hmm.
and if we get stuck on that one drop, we forget the rest of the trail. And I did that a lot too when I worked with the USA cycling team at World Championships cross country. I told them too, you have like a whole lap that you need to get to know. So don't get stuck on this one drop if you don't feel ready for that yet. We'll
Yeah,
come back tomorrow. Let's focus
yeah.
on the rest of the lap. And, often you come back the next day and you're like, okay, I feel a lot better today. Let's, see if we can overcome this fear today. Um, but yeah, I also think it's important to sometimes say like, okay, that's okay. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to walk away
Mhm.
from it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you must have to know yourself so well. And I guess it's like putting yourself in the situation enough times that you can tell the difference between when you're sort of you have the skill and you're just being afraid, or when it's a rational, like, survival mechanism. But it probably takes a lot of practice to get to the point to know yourself well enough, like going up to the edge of whatever it is enough times to be like, okay, okay.
Or just walk up to and be like, hell no, I'm going home.
That would
Not
probably be
today.
me. I think it's so cool that one of the things you're working on right now, that or you have been, that I love, is you have taken your, amazing technical skills, gravity skills, and you have been a mentor and coach for USA Cycling for the Olympics and for the World Cup racing. And I watched a video with you and Haley Batten doing the test course for the Olympics, and I just thought it was so cool to be able to, in a totally in it not in a different discipline of cycling, but to take your level of skill and bring that to the next generation of cross country racers is
Yeah.
like, it was friggin' amazing to
Yeah,
watch.
it's so fun to work with these athletes, and like the thing for me too is like I can really relate to them. And I
Mhm.
think that's hard for a lot of other coaches, and especially when it comes to the female side. Like I know what Haley is feeling. I know what she's thinking,
Yeah.
So I think not like randomly just put pressure on her on a certain part of the course that she has to do a certain way. It's like working with that athlete first, trying to overcome that fear or figuring out like where is she kind of stuck, like what is she fearful of, or like how
Mhm.
can we work with this to make it work. And I think knowing what they feel is really important, because like we've been there, we've been on the race line. We know that if it rains the night before the race, we're awake in
Yeah.
that. And like
Listening to the rain.
it's just and you're like, oh man, I got a race tomorrow, and you're already stressed out before you even are on the start line because of the weather and stuff like that, right?
I just got chills when you said that, because I went right back to like laying in bed the night before races going, oh, it's raining, it's raining. Ah. So
I
like that,
know
I had a whole
exactly.
body reaction to that.
Yeah. And knowing what that athlete is feeling already the morning when she wakes up and she's going to breakfast, and kind of, I think understanding that part as a coach is also really important, and not just like leaving that aside. There are so many more elements than just being out on the race course and having to tackle like certain sections. There's, so much more to it. And also, I think bike setup, we are so particular with bike setup in downhill and enduro, and being able to like help out at the cross country, like the races with setting up their equipment, especially with the younger riders, like the juniors, under 23 racers, like or riders, they don't really know a lot yet. So
Yeah.
trying to teach them that at a younger age is great, right? So when they hit elite, they actually really know how to set up their bikes or talk to their mechanics and stuff like that.
How did you get that gig with USA Cycling? Was that, did you push for that, or was that did they come to you?
Yeah, no, they reached out to me. That was 2 years ago. They reached out to
Cool.
me. They were like, "Hey, we're looking, for a skills coach." And then now we have Jill on board as well. Jill Kittner.
Yeah.
She kind of took over some of my stuff because I got super busy here
Yeah.
in Bentonville as well. So it was a little harder to find that balance. And I worked with Jill in the beginning of the year together, and that was, so cool too. Like
Amazing.
Jill like thinks the same as myself. We teach the same. So knowing that, we have kind of the same work way of teaching skills
Yeah.
is really cool as well. Yeah.
What did it feel like for you to knowing that you had, helped Haley and some of the young rider? What did it feel like when she crossed the line in silver medal and you were watching that race? Like, how was that for you?
Oh,
Knowing you played a part, you know?
yeah, it was so cool. It's like, I think as a racer, you always strive for that feeling of like winning and being on top of the podium. And then when your career ends, it's like, what is that purpose, right? What does it make it feel like special, or, the reason you get up in the morning? And that was one of the reasons why I do this and why I love this, right? Seeing her accomplish that medal and knowing that the year before we worked hard on that course, to dialing in lines and making her feel comfortable and prepare for that race, it's just amazing, right? That's what you really thrive for as a coach as well. But then on the other hand, I get the same feeling when I have a beginner rider here that is like, just getting into mountain biking and is getting their first like air time.
Yeah.
And that's something that they're not going to forget for a while, right? So it's really cool sharing that feeling with that person of accomplishing something badass that they've never done, right? So it's something that's going to stick with them. And I think that's a really cool feeling now versus like back in the day when I was, really focused on winning races.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you said that because it's pretty unique that someone at your high of a level, you're basically skills coaching for the Olympics and for the highest level of rider. And like, I'm sure when Haley crossed that finish line, you had as much adrenaline as she did. Like you were racing with her on that course. But then to also feel the same excitement for a total beginner who is getting their first air. I mean, that's pretty unique for you to get that kind of excitement for other people on such a broad span. Like you're not bored with the beginner being because they're not elite. You're still getting the joy of helping somebody else achieve something on a bike. It's pretty special, Annika.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is. And I think that's like, such a fun part of coaching too. And sometimes I joke to my clients because even if they have been riding for a while, they have some bad habits. And then they come up to me and they're like getting really impatient in the clinic itself. And I was like, just be patient. I was like, you give me 2 hours and I'm trying to fix something in 2 hours that you've been doing for 10 years. I was like, no pressure on me. But normally we work that out in 2 hours, right? But I think that's the fun part for me too. It's like really figuring out what people are struggling with and what their bad habits are and try to break them in a session like really fast.
Oh, that would totally be me. Be like, okay, I want to improve faster.
That's normally the first thing I kind of say too. Is like, so today you're going to try to be patient.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
get frustrated. Yeah.
Athletes aren't always patient, right?
Nope, not at all.
Well, let's talk about patience then, because you had a really serious car accident in, was it 2019? Is that right?
2020.
2020,
Yep.
and it ended your career ultimately. You spent a year of really intense rehab, wanting to come back to racing, and eventually, about a year after the accident, you had to officially announce your retirement to racing, and you didn't want to retire. You were not ready to stop. And so, can you take us through a little bit of what happened and how you approached your recovery? And we both share TBI and concussion with long-term symptoms.
Yep.
uh, the brain injury for both of us has shifted our career focuses. We're both still in the careers we love, but in a different way. And so we share a lot of that. But you had a dark struggle. And so, yeah, take us through kind of what happened,
Yeah.
the process, your announcements, and where
Mhm.
you were at that time.
Yeah, I'll try to put it in a nutshell. It's a
Okay,
long
I know it's
story.
a big, it's a lot to cover, but
Yeah, but
I definitely want to go there because one,
yeah,
your career ended in a way that you didn't envision. You know, from age 4, up until 2020, you were on this path, and you were achieving
yeah,
your goals, and you're doing amazing things, and then it all stopped in basically in one instant. So
yeah.
yeah, bring us through it a little bit.
Yeah, so I was actually, it's almost going to be 5 years next month, the car accident. I was just on my way home from riding that day. I had my bike was in the back of the pickup. I was almost home, crossing the last intersection, and out of nowhere, I remember seeing the green light because I just came rolling up, and I kept rolling, and out of nowhere, somebody T-boned me into the driver's side of my pickup. And the only thing I quickly remember is like, I'm in a car accident. Like, it was so
Mhm.
strange. And in that accident, I sustained a concussion and a whiplash. And that combination of the two and the side impact, I mean, they're all different, right? And this one was especially because it was a side impact for me, and the twist of the neck uh, damaged quite a few things in the cerebellum. And they can't really exactly pin it down where, but so after the accident, I actually didn't immediately feel like I wasn't knocked out. I felt pretty bad, but I did not lose conscious. But the days after, and actually the night after, or that evening, my speech was getting worse. My headaches were getting more severe because the adrenaline was going out of my body. I mean, I had so much adrenaline from that accident. I was so out of it. I even started cramping in my legs, and I was like, what is all happening? And I remember the officer coming up to me as well and asking me if I was going riding or going on my way home from riding. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, well, you're wearing your bike attire and you have a bike in the back. And, all that stuff was just a blur to me. But so the symptoms for me really got severe that evening and the next couple of days. And I immediately knew, like, hey, I'm concussed. I need to see my doctor. Went to see my doctor. And kind of from that moment on, I started going into the system of brain rehab doctors, facilities, because I was super nauseous, extreme headaches, dizziness. A lot of my internal, like, things were really off in my body. I was over urinating, especially at night, disruptive sleep, sensitive to noise, sensitive to light. Basically, you name it, I kind of had it. And no driving for a bit, definitely, no riding. I had a hard time walking in a straight line. Like, all the balance was weird. And so yeah, I went to the first couple of doctor visits, and they said, like, well, you have, a brain injury. We have to, like, try to figure out what is exactly wrong with you. And I remember the first couple of sessions, I went to a facility that really was specialized in brain rehab, but mostly for people that had strokes. So I was in a facility almost every day with people that were 70, 80 years and older. And that was already, like, really weird for me. And then every time, like, I see a video of myself, or they would videotape me with, like, the balance stuff, and I was like, I don't even recognize that person in the video. Like, what the heck? What the heck just happened? Right? And then not being really able to do anything other than trying to drag myself out of bed with a headache, with like 2 hours of sleep, and then going to, like, brain rehab again. But yeah, that just went on and on. I made little steps, baby steps of recovery. And at one point, the current rehab facility said, that was like after months already, he's like, I can't do anything anymore. We need to figure something else out, because obviously you still have problems. And a big problem for myself was that my left eye would go into a spasm with motion, and then it would roll back, and that would give really bad symptoms of, like, dizziness and nauseousness, because my eyes weren't able to track what I was seeing. So there's some misconnection, misfiring happening in the brain, and we do so much with our eyes, like everything, right?
Yeah.
And I remember even trying to do a lap around the condo facility that I was staying at, and that would knock me down for like 3 days, and I would be, like, just in bed trying to recover from just emotion. And so we did more like tests and exercises. And I went to the optometrist for like, I was like 20 visits. I had to do a minimum of 20 visits and then do a metronome. I think you probably saw some videos of me like just clapping my hands. And I would stand there for an hour freaking clapping my hands. And I hear a bell in my headphones. You have to time it. So you're trying to reconnect a neural system with what you're hearing and what you're seeing and what you're feeling and tapping on the floor. And that was the opposite because I was in a facility with like older people. I went to a facility where a lot of kids were that struggled with vision.
Mhm.
And I was like, man, I felt like I was back in like kindergarten. I was like, this is not great. And then finally, I found somebody locally that was a sports vision coach.
Yeah.
And my first visit with him, he worked with the Anaheim Ducks and he worked with athletes from Oakley.
Mhm.
And his name is Ryan. And I went to see him. And we were about 5 minutes in the exercises, and he had me do really technical, not even technical, had to look left and right on a board. And I passed out. I just fell to the floor. My brain, like we were triggering exactly what they needed to trigger to figure out what was wrong. And it was again my left eye, and it boop, went away. And I just like, and that I broke down many times, but I broke down right away at the first session with Ryan. But I was kind of relieved because I was
Yeah.
finally somebody that know how to trigger this system and hopefully find a way to make bigger improvements. And
Yeah.
so working with him, that was really for me finally where things were starting to click. We were over a year in. And
Yeah.
so where we just talked about my my doctors at one point had to tell me like, hey, you need to medically retire because you're still so far off of the going back to racing. And I kind of knew that, but as the athlete, every morning I woke up, I was still trying to figure out like, when can I race again? When can I pick up my training again?
Yeah.
Or when I would go to the doctor's office for a check-in, I would be, so do you think I can make Crankworx this August? You know, it's like, and I think that decision that they made for me was looking back a good one because after that decision, I finally relaxed.
Yeah.
Up until that point, I was just like so focused on getting back to racing that I almost was not giving myself the time to recover. And it was a hard pill to swallow. Like somebody else did this to me. I wasn't done racing yet. I was
Yeah.
still, battling for the top spots. And I think accepting that somebody else ended my career was a hard pill to swallow, but also, I can't change that. You have to move on. And so it gave me a little bit more of calming down, and then focusing on rehab therapy and slowly getting back into biking again. It was on the e-bike mostly or at the park, just on my road bike, trying to train the system. And he challenged me to be out on my road bike and like count trees on the side, like
Mm.
just to train my vision, right? Little things like that, or try to look at the line on the road because the lines on the road were making me very nauseous. And I think all that really helped and pushed me and got me to where I am today. And like I can, look back, it's been 5 years, but I feel now a lot better than back in the day. I still struggle with symptoms, but I know when they come up, I know how to handle them. I know when to take a step back. And, I still wear headphones when I go to a movie theater or when I'm out at a concert. And because I still can't like handle all of that.
I mean, thank you for taking us all through 5 years in 5 minutes. Like, that's
There's,
amazing. And I know there's a lot more to it. You said a few things that I really want to hone into a little bit. One thing was when you finally accepted that, and let go of the dream of coming back to racing. And it makes me think of how, I mean, a brain injury is your whole nervous system, and you talked about the stimulation of your eyes and your ears and everything that's coming into our body from touch to sight to smell is being processed by our brain. And so I, like you, had eye, neck stuff.
yeah,
But when you finally sort of let go of that internal grasp on racing, that your whole nervous system then was like, whew, okay, this is where I am. I don't like it, but it
Yeah.
actually gave you a relief and the ability for your body then to maybe accept and absorb the rehab in, because you weren't holding on to something anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I think, yeah, that was a really important part. And one thing that I did as well, and that I kind of advise people to do as well, is grab little videos of yourself. So throughout the journey, I grabbed videos and I never really posted them because I have a hard time with posting and being vulnerable or feel try to other people will start to feel pity for you, right? I don't really like that. But I have these videos where I just like talk when my symptoms were really severe, and I'm like, hey, I hope one day I can look back and know that this is a lot better to my future self, right? And I could kind of see the progress in that, but also now I can look back and I underestimated how bad it was in the beginning. There would be like days where sometimes the headaches were so severe that I couldn't really get out of bed. It was just pounding, so much pressure on the head. And I always kind of joked, how our forks have these pressure relief valves nowadays that you can
Mhm.
press
Yeah.
and it relieves. I was like, I wish I had those on my head because the
Yeah.
pressure was sometimes so big on the head. And like you just said, like neck, this morning I went and got my steroid shot because that's something I have to do now because it doesn't relax anymore just from the whiplash. And there's some nerve damage in there. So there's nerve pain now. Um, but yeah, it's a not an easy road, but it's more like it's a marathon, right? You can't rush yourself. And the moment I started relaxing a little bit more and gave myself some time, things were a little better at the time, like a little bit more sleep every month, right? Going from like hardly any to maybe 4 hours to 5 hours. And now I'm kind of back to 7 to 8 hours. But back then it was like, it's weird how the brain is just not doing what it needs to do.
Yeah, and I mean, you talked about it. It's an invisible injury. So people, you look normal from the outside, people can't tell, and it sounds like you're a little bit like me, in denial of it and sort of hiding a little bit because one, you didn't want people to feel pity, or maybe you didn't want to admit it yourself. That was me thinking, oh, I can just push through this.
Yeah.
There's also, when your sport is your job, there's the pressure of sponsors and keeping your job, and then there's also the identity of, you are a professional cyclist. I
Yeah.
was a professional cyclist. And so there's a lot wrapped into an injury like this. If you had blown your knee out or whatever and you needed to get a surgery, everyone would have just sort of been like, oh, okay, this is the recovery period. Yeah, Anneke
Yeah.
blew her knee out, no big deal. But with a brain injury, as you said, they're all a little bit different, but I think and they're treatable. I'm going to say this to people right now. They're treatable, and it's finding the right people, the right doctors, the right kind of care. It took me longer than it took you to get the right kind of care, but about a year. So maybe about the same time. But they are treatable. And I think people are so afraid of, one, not everyone who crashes and hits their head gets a brain injury, or concussion. And two, they're treatable, as long as you understand the myriad of symptoms. There's like 7 different types of symptoms, and each person has their own unique combination of all of those things. And
Yeah.
I loved what you said about the videos and about just being accountable to yourself, because I did some videos, I did some journaling, and I went back later and looked at them. And one, it was really sad, of like how bad it was. But two, it was reassuring that like I have made progress. And I think with subjective symptoms, like I think I'm sleepy, you could track your sleep, you can track the amount of headaches you get, but there's like, I think my mood is better, but I'm not sure. I think I'm not as testy or angry, but I'm not sure. And so journaling or videoing and going back is pretty powerful. And for me, I put out a 4-part podcast series called Brainstorm with Celine Yeager, who is a journalist friend of mine. And she really helped me. And we basically talked about the therapies I tried that didn't work, that did work. And I was in the middle of it still. And so were a lot of tears. And she made me go back and look at my journals, and we shared some excerpts. And it was really painful, but it was also really powerful to be like, I'm getting better. Wow, that was really bad. I was in denial.
Yeah.
And it was a big lesson for me to be a little bit more open about it, which was part of the impetus of wanting to talk to you. But yeah, how was it? I want to ask you, how was it for the people closest to you and the people around you, your family members, your closest friends,
Yeah,
while
that's
you're going through this?
so it was also a difficult time because I really figured out who my friends were. I was living in California, so my family's in the Netherlands. So what I did is, and I kind of, I got good at this throughout my racing career. So sometimes I would crash, and I would call my mom and dad. I'm like, I'm okay, just got a couple of stitches. I would FaceTime them. And I did exactly the same. I waited a day. I, FaceTime my mom and dad and sat in front of the, phone. I was like, hey, just had a car accident, but I'm doing okay. Right. Just to assure them that they saw me and that I was okay. I was like, hey, I do have some headaches and I'm going to get that checked out. So I don't think for the full extent, I was showing my parents how bad it was because I didn't want them to worry.
Yeah.
And then I had a lot of like my close friends that really showed up for me, did my grocery shopping, drove me around, went to
Yeah.
doctor's appointments, and especially like the things like grocery shopping. I hated grocery stores. I could not handle grocery stores, and I still have a difficulty with it. And it's because of the lights, the depth perception, and walking and having to look constantly. And at times, I still just need to run out and be like, good
Mhm.
thing we have online shopping
Yeah.
nowadays.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was difficult at the time, and I think too. So at one point, I got to the point where driving was still kind of stressful, especially where I lived in Orange County, California, and I felt like something needed to change in my life. My medical bills were piling up. I was in a lawsuit because of the car accident, and it was going nowhere. The lady was like underinsured. I had to pay a lot of out of pocket, and I was like, okay, this is not really sustainable right here. I don't really like it anyways right now, and so I had been thinking about moving to Bentonville for a little bit already, and I was like, okay, this is it. I'm just going to flip the switch because something just needs to change.
Mm.
And I knew a couple of people in Bentonville. I reached out to them, and I was like, hey, I'm thinking of moving to Bentonville. They're like, do it. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And yeah, packed up, moved to Bentonville, and it was exactly like the change that I needed.
Yeah.
It was a slower lifestyle, and the riding here is really good for me too because it's not your constant extreme riding. There's a lot of flow, more like blue trails. I'm not constantly riding the super tech NAR stuff. And coaching has been great too because I slowly picked up the coaching. I can balance my own schedule and I'm not constantly riding. So I'm standing more than I'm riding and, passing on the knowledge that I have. So it's a job that works well with this injury. And here I found a great group of friends again that understand my injury. The other day I was riding with one of my friends, and it's if I ride in the woods, it's still a little harder with the tunnel vision and the lights, and I got nauseous just after like riding for like 20 minutes, and I was like, man, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna bounce. It's like this is not the day for me to ride. I was busy already that week, so I think just the numerous events of doing things was the brain was tired, and they understand, but I have to be open about it, which is still really difficult. You have to be, kind of opening up. And I was part of a movie Beyond the Ashes as well, a really beautiful movie about adaptive riding and telling my story. That was like the first time as well that I was really open about my story. And I think that took me a while to be open enough to talk to people about it because in the
Yeah.
beginning I was just not really, I didn't want to admit that maybe I had it. Like you said, we're a little stubborn. We're like, nah, I'll be all right. And I'm like, that's still not okay, but we're doing a lot better, right? There's a lot of positives right now. So that's, I think, really important to look at.
How is your mental health during this recovery period? You've talked a lot about the physical health and the frustration, but how is your mental health?
Yeah, so luckily, like right after the accident, I contacted my sports psychologist that I
Mhm.
worked with throughout my racing career. I
Awesome.
was like, I'll probably need this because
Yeah.
like this is not, I'm not doing so great.
Mhm.
So going back to him on a regular base, talking to him helped a lot with getting through this.
Yeah.
But it wasn't easy because it wasn't until I had the TBI and the concussion and I felt useless and I couldn't do anything. I always tell people, like, I now understand why people get so depressed and go so dark with people that have CTE or long lasting symptoms from this injury, because there's so much confusion in the brain that you cannot understand, that I cannot understand. And dealing with that on like a daily base, and you might relate to this too now, you're trying to understand it, but you can't understand it. And I think that's what's really hard with like a brain injury. And they're different for everybody, but having that confusion in the brain that you can't, and that's mentally hard to like get yourself out of.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it gets better. Like kind of what you said too, it's treatable. Find the people that can help you with that. And I'm still doing that to this day. I'm still trying to find facilities. A year and a half ago, I went to a facility in Minneapolis, the Functional Neurology Center with Dr.
Mhm.
Smoo, and he has the next level equipment. And he is so well experienced with dealing with concussions. And he was able to even like get some more improvements in my eyes and my vision in my neural connections. So I think too, like you can't sit still. I think that's really important to keep moving forward and to keep training your brain and your neural connections after a TBI.
Yeah, it's not just like one and done, yeah, and I can relate to that because I've sort of gone in fits and starts where I'll do a bunch of rehab and therapy, and then I think I am better, and then I just sort of like, okay, I'm going to go back to regular life, but realizing that, and so then I won't do something for a while or won't do my eye exercises, and then realize, I need to get back to them. But so it's a little bit of a kind of periodization, just like training. You can't go full on with the rehab all the time. You got to take breaks because it
Yeah.
is quite exhausting.
Hmm.
But yeah, it is a little bit like an athlete training where, it's maintenance,
Yeah.
something that, like we don't just train and then never train again. It's sort
Yeah.
of a
Yeah.
maintenance menu. I'm glad to hear that you had psychologist support. That was really important for me too, is to have somebody to talk to because, quite honestly, I think you mentioned it in one of your interviews. Like, I didn't recognize myself. And I'm like, who is this person and why is she acting this way? Like, who is that? So, kind of having an outside voice to reflect, this is what's going on. This is why you're emotional. Or this is why you're angry. Um,
The
yeah.
emotional part, I'm sure you had that too.
Oh,
And they
yeah.
come with brain injuries, but like it's so weird. Like, especially in the beginning, I had one video too. I think I posted it a while back, but I just like, I went to try to go on a little road ride. And I think I broke down like four times in like 30 minutes. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I just don't know why, but I can't stop crying today. It was so weird. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's hard to get through it. So is this, I mean, how hard does this compare to any of your, failures in racing or your challenges in racing or even like other life challenges? How does this compare with the sort of
Yeah,
other hard things?
definitely the hardest one that I had for sure. Also
Yeah.
because it was career ending for me. I
Yeah.
think that was a difficult one to accept. But if I look at where I'm at right now in life, I'm really happy. So,
Yeah.
even though it ended my career and I had to go through all of that, I learned a lot through it. And hopefully, we can help other people with this by sharing our story and, being able to still do what I love and actually pass on the knowledge that I have about writing and coaching people has been really good. So I also try to look at, everything bad that happened, or not bad, like everything that was really difficult has brought me here where I'm right now. And I'm
Mhm.
grateful for that. And I'm trying to always find a positive swing to that because, yeah, I can't change what happened, but I, can try to make the most out of it where I'm at right now in life. And I'm pretty stoked with, the job that I have and the sponsors that stick with me. Because like you mentioned earlier too, that was really scary and difficult. Like, what are they going to think? Like, are they just going to drop me? Like, I can't really ride. And, like Specialized just stuck with me and they were like, take your time. And most of my sponsors did. And I felt like so grateful for that because I was so scared that everybody was just going to be like, ah, yeah, you can't do anything. You can't ride. You can't promote us. Um, but yeah, it showed a lot from the industry side too,
Yeah.
that they are taking brain injuries more and more seriously.
Yeah.
And, like we see it too, there's so many athletes out there now, especially in downhill racing, like a Miriam Nicole, or like that they have had previous brain injuries and they're struggling with coming back, and that everybody's taking it really seriously. And I'm happy that we got to that point because, yeah, they're pretty freaking scary.
Well, and even just a couple years ago, there wasn't the conversation around it when somebody crashed, like, oh, did they do a concussion protocol? And now, like, that language is happening. So people are at least, not just sweeping it under the rug. I mean, watching the Tour de France and the Tour de France Femme, you know, 10 years ago, there were crashes all over the place and nobody was talking about head injury or concussion. And now it's part of the language. So it is changing, which I appreciate. And a lot because of people like you have been open and honest about it and not
Yeah.
afraid to say, here's this crazy video of me like crying on a bike ride. This is real. And I
Yeah.
think it takes somebody of your level of racing and hardcore and like super hard charger to show something like that going, it is invisible but it's real.
Yeah.
And I really respect the fact that you sort of came out about all of it. I have a question. When you were in your recovery, you were told, doctors basically said you're not going to race again and you announced your retirement. What were you thinking at that moment of like, okay, what is my life and my career going to be like? Were you already like, okay, well, I'll be a mountain bike coach, I'll stay in the industry? Or what were you going through in that thought process of like, okay, racing's done, what's next?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was more scared at the time because I didn't know what I was going to do because I was still a year in and I was still pretty far from like doing a proper mountain bike ride, right? There was still so much I needed to do in order to get on the bike. So I wasn't really sure if coaching was actually something that I was going to be able to do. I kind of just took it week by week, month by month back then. um yeah, I didn't really had any plans, and that was the scary part too. Like, I don't know where this is going to go. And yeah, luckily
Did
it
you
went
know
good.
you wanted to stay with cycling if it was possible?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I knew that that was just something I've always loved. And
Yeah.
yeah, I wanted to, try to do. I mean, I still, at the time, I think I still wanted to get back to racing, but at least I gave myself some time to recover better. And then I think month after month after month, I was like, okay, writing is going better. I think at first I was like, I need to move, and then Bentonville might give me the possibility to start coaching a little bit
Yeah.
more. It's the right setting. It's the right place to do that. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just like the recovery, there's a lot of layers to it all. It isn't like one thing that helped you recover from your brain injury or helped you transition your career. It was
Yeah.
it was a lot of things where you knew you needed a different location, a different space. You put yourself around like a mountain biking mecca area so you could still be around it.
Yeah.
And yeah, and luckily you had a support system with your friends and sponsors and people that stuck with you.
Yeah.
It sounds
And
like
the
it was a
cool,
really layered approach to, because you can look at it now, go, you have a successful coaching business, you're the skills coach for USA Cycling, for the World
yeah,
Cups. Like, you can look now and be like, wow, well, of course, Annika's totally succeeding. But in the middle of it, it probably didn't, you
didn't
didn't
feel
have
like
that
that.
vision.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, not at all. And every time, like over the past years, I was struggling. The first couple of years, I was struggling with watching the racing, And every time, especially when I was watching the Crankworx event, I I felt like I was still unfinished business. And
Mhm.
so last year, was it last year? Yeah, or yeah, at the end of last year, I emailed Darren from Crankworx, who I've known Darren for a long time. I was like, hey, Darren, I was like, is there any possibility I can come to Crankworx this year and do one final run on A line with the pro women? I was like, it's exactly 10 years since I won the Queen of Crankworx. And that week is exactly 5 years since the car accident. And I'm like, I feel unfinished. Like I still have this like thing in me that I would love to kind of do one final run, and that would be my retirement run. And I just
Mhm.
had to email him, and I was like, okay. I was like, this is even hard for me to email. I told him at the end, and then Darren responded right away. He's like, yes, like let's do this. I would love for it. So I'm actually flying out on Monday. So on the 12th, I will be doing one final A line run at Crankworx. So I'm not officially competing, right? Because I made that very clear to them too. Like I can't handle the stress. I can't take the risk. I won't be competitive because I haven't
Yeah.
trained or raced in 5 years. But I would love to like be surrounded by, Crankworx, the event, the people, my sponsors, my friends, to finally say goodbye to the sport at the professional race level. So I'm really looking forward to that. I think that would kind of close the chapter of my racing career. So
Wow, Annika, that is like such a beautiful that one it's such a gift, and I like have chills thinking about it, and I'm like
yeah,
gonna be watching glued to the screen to watch you. But the emotional maturity that you have to have recognized I need to finish the chapter, not
yeah,
close the door, but finish the chapter of the book, and it was unfinished. So like you're obviously have learned so much about yourself to be able to know you needed that, but you also wanted to be surrounded by like your community and the people who you love and who love and admire you. Like what I mean, I'm like getting tears thinking
I
about
know.
it.
I'm like, I'm probably crying the whole run down.
All right now, yeah, you'll just be like, oh my gosh. So what do you hope for that feeling? What are you going for in
I
that
think
run?
to take it all in,
Yeah.
be in the moment, be in the start gate, have the final countdown of dropping into a race run and then coming into the finish arena, right? And being able to take that in, because I feel like as an athlete, you always kind of want to stop on a high note and have that final race weekend that you know that this is it and now I'm going to retire from racing. And I hope that just gives me some closure and to see my friends again and to just kind of celebrate still a really good racing career that I had with, the people that supported me, that been there with me. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. It's going to be special.
I mean, one of the most decorated careers in mountain biking, and to
Thank you.
go to close that chapter that way in and that you're on a bike and that you can ride a
Exactly.
line at this
Yeah.
point. I mean,
Mhm.
that is a win, like a
Yeah.
huge win that you
Yeah.
can, from such a serious injury, be able to do the kind of riding that most people in the world can't do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Oh
very,
my
very
gosh.
grateful for a lot of things. And, even I was lucky in the car accident too. I was lucky I was driving a big American pickup and
Yeah.
not a small vehicle because it would have been way worse. So, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think that run is going to be one of the most important and amazing runs of your entire career.
Yeah. I think
Absolutely.
so too. Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to close a little bit with, well, I'm going to reassure everyone, we're going to put a ton of resources, concussion TBI resources. Hopefully when this airs, I'll put a link to your final run,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
and the video and Beyond the Ashes, but mostly to give people resources and
Hmm.
reassurance that if you are going through a brain injury or someone you love is going through, or maybe there's one in your future, hopefully not, but if there is, to not be doom and gloom, but to give resources for people to get the right care and therapy and help, because it is out there. So
Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah.
it's such a difficult injury, and They're all different. They're really hard to understand. We recently just lost one of the younger girls that raced, Lorraine, as well, and she had a very severe injury too, brain injury, and she wasn't able to find a way out. And that's so hard to hear and see that
Yeah.
it's such a dark injury. And hopefully for everybody that kind of watches and you know find the help, find the people, surround yourself with the people that hopefully can help you or point you in the right direction to find the right specialist to, yeah, keep making improvements. Yeah.
Yeah, it is pretty lonely, and for often the injured person doesn't know how to ask for help. So I loved hearing that the people around you were giving help, even if you don't
Mhm.
know how to ask for it, like making
Yeah.
food and being there for each other. And I so appreciate what you're sharing with the world. I'm sitting here actually thinking maybe I should go learn to do a jump with Anneke and
Yes.
do something that, like, my hands just started sweating thinking
I
about
love
it.
it. You got this. You totally got it.
But what a gift that you are sharing yourself with the mountain bike community at all ends, from beginner to absolutely the best in the world, sharing your skill set. And what a cool next chapter for
Yeah,
you.
it is. Yeah, really grateful for that. So we're just gonna keep, trucking away with that.
So as we wrap it up, this podcast is called "What's the Rush," and it was sort of born from my concussion recovery of, like, what happens when we take a minute and we
Yeah.
pause, especially hard charging people, and take a minute to slow down. So I'll ask you one last question of, what are you working on right now, trying to pause or relax or slow down?
It's kind of funny. The one thing that came to mind, I'm still very like active always, and I'm a morning person. And my boyfriend the other day, in a funny way, he's like, "Man, you're over there in third gear already. I'm just waking up and I'm in first gear." I'm like, "Sorry, it's in my personality a lot." But I think the one thing that I've really learned is to be more in the moment and definitely less rushed, less planned as well. As an athlete, we're always planning. It's just a constant planning and structure of life. And I definitely took a big step back in that, knowing that I relax a lot more. I sit on the porch, have my cup of tea. And when I do ride or coach, I'm a lot more in the moment and enjoy what I'm doing now. There's no more schedules, training programs,
Yeah.
hours that I have to make a week.
Yeah.
I don't have to lift certain amount of weights anymore 3 times a week, so all that has changed, but it has changed for the better. So I'm finally finding some more calm time and being less rushed.
I love that. What a great way to close. Anneke Beerten, thank you so much for talking to me today and for sharing with the rest of the
Yeah.
world.
Thank you, Rebecca. And I do hope that we see each other soon again. I would love to.
It sounds like I have a mountain bike lesson that I need to come take in
Heck
Arkansas
yeah.
with you.
Hey, it's a long and dusty road and a hot and heavy load. Folks I meet ain't always kind. Some are bad, some are good, some have done the best they could. Some have tried to ease my troubling mind. And I can't help but wonder where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Can't help but wonder where I'm bound.